tutorial, we're going to be looking at stakeholders and the role they play in businesses. A stakeholder is a person with an interest or concern in something, especially businesses. But there are a wide range of stakeholders and they'll have different interests in a business, so we're going to be exploring these in more detail. There are a range of different stakeholders within businesses. The most commonly associated is financial stakeholders, those who contribute financially with money towards a business. But there are a range of other people or groups of people that may have an interest in a business. And we're going to explore some of those in a little bit more detail now. A financial stakeholder is a stakeholder that has a financial interest in the business, which means that they have contributed to the business financially. New businesses may often look for financial stakeholders to help them to fund the business and to get it off the ground. Or it might be an existing business that needs a financial contribution to help them to expand their services and to grow and develop. Financial stakeholders tend to hold shares in the business, so in exchange for their funds to enable the business to grow and expand, they'll own shares of that business, which means that they're then entitled to a share of the profits if the business makes any. Now, obviously, with any new business especially, and any existing businesses, there is always a risk that the business won't generate a profit. So it can be a bit of a gamble deciding whether or not to make a financial contribution to a business. If it pays off, however, then obviously that profit share pays off. From a business perspective, having financial stakeholders not only gives the extra support financially that might enable a business to grow when it otherwise couldn't afford to, but it could also contribute in terms of ideas from those individuals that have now got an invested interest in that company. They might come with extra experience or qualifications that would enable the business owner to expand their ideas in clever ways and effective ways. It's a shared responsibility and it's also a shared financial risk. It's not one person funding the whole business. It's a shared financial risk with other financial stakeholders. Now, in terms of listening to your financial stakeholder, if you chose not to, if you chose to dismiss any ideas that your financial stakeholder had for the business and they weren't happy with the way that you were running it, then you run the risk of them removing the funds, which would have an impact on your business, especially if you were reliant on those funds for further expansion. So it's really important as a business person that you consider the ideas and the way that your potential financial stakeholders might want to operate. If you've got contrasting ideas, it might not be a good idea to take on that particular financial stakeholder. Now, for any business, employees are a really important asset, and they're also a very invested stakeholder in the business they're working for. From an employee's perspective, the more successful the business is, the bigger potential for them as an individual for promotion and increased pay. So they have a vested interest in the business and they want it to succeed in order that they can potentially have a promotion and improve their prospects. If business decreases and the business isn't doing so well, then they run the risk of their own position at the company. So whether a company or a business is doing particularly well is important to an employee because it can have a direct impact on them. From a business's perspective, if you have unhappy employees working for you, there's a good chance that their productivity is going to decrease, and this could have a knock-on effect in terms of profit generating, and you may not make as much money. If they're so unhappy that they stop working for you and quit to work elsewhere, you will have a higher staff turnover, and this is really costly in terms of advertising for new staff and also training up new staff. We can apply most of these points to managers of a business as well. Again, the more successful the business, the bigger potential for promotion and perhaps even bonuses when managers are concerned. Again, if the business decreases and there isn't as much profit, then they do run the risk of losing their position at a job. Now, managers are considered to be more highly skilled than a general employee. And if a manager is not happy with the business they're working for, from a business's perspective, if they aren't considering a manager's opinion or their faults or listening to their ideas, it may be that they take their expertise elsewhere. They may even take them to a locally competing business, which would have a real knock-on effect on your business as well. The owner or owners of a business obviously have an invested interest in that business. Again, the better the business does, the more profit it's going to generate and they will receive as a result. If the business is not generating a profit, then they don't receive that financial gain. Business owners have the overall say on the decisions affecting the business. However, if there are multiple owners who can't agree on different points, this could result in the removal of expertise and financial investment. For example, if one owner decides to leave the business. But before that, there could be multiple issues with confrontation, which would decrease morale and make it quite difficult to work as part of a team. So if you're an owner in a shared ownership of a business, it's really important that you take on board the opinion of your other owners to avoid conflict and to ensure that the business runs as smoothly as possible. Believe it or not, customers are stakeholders in any business. They have an invested interest in that business, and they also have a huge impact on whether or not that business is going to be successful. The reason a customer might have an invested interest in a new business established in their area is because it may be providing a much needed service and/or products. If customers aren't happy with the way a business runs and the choices that they're making and don't feel like they're being listened to, then they may choose to take their business elsewhere. If a business is choosing not to take on board the opinions and feedback from customers, they risk the loss of that business, which again will have a direct impact on their profit margin. Suppliers are another stakeholder for new businesses. Now, this might be ingredients for a bakery, for example, or produce for a shop. If a new business is opening, this is generally considered good for suppliers because this increases their business and therefore their profit margin. If the business does not consider the opinion of the suppliers, or they don't agree with certain ways that they work, that supplier may choose to stop supplying to the business, which could create issues with their products and with their supply. This again would have a knock-on effect on their profit margin. The government are also stakeholders in relation to businesses. The more successful businesses, the more money it turns over, the more tax they pay, which goes to the government and is then distributed amongst our services. So therefore, a government is going to want more businesses to thrive in order that they can pay more in taxes and allow them to contribute more in services. Now, if a business doesn't consider what a government is telling them to do in relation to their business, for example, it doesn't follow legislation on how to run that business, then the government has powers to put restrictions and maybe even stop a business from trading completely. With this information, you should now be able to complete the stakeholders task within your workbook.